It's the kind of thing where you go in these casting meetings, which happens all the time at studio, like, hey, who would be the iconic person we want to cast? Ray Fiennes. Okay, we're never going to get him. Who should we really get? And then when it happened, it was just incredible. And, when we talk about making a real Sherlock movie and there being real tension and real drama for Holmes to play off of, you need the best Moriarty you can have. And Rafe was obviously just one of the greatest actors in the world. He's scary to look at. He looks at you just to say hi or to ask you what you had for breakfast, and it's terrifying. So to have John and Will get to play off of him, you really feel like you're in a serious genre movie, which is always what we wanted to achieve. When we went after Rebecca Hall, she was the first person, we tried to cast for that role because she was sort of our dream person. That she brings so much real life intelligence to it. You can really feel that she's Holmes' equal right out of the screen. Will and John are better than anyone in the world at improvising, and their chemistry, because it's from real life, it's so ready on the screen, right? It's right there. You don't have two actors meeting for the first time and let's try to create a relationship on screen. Let's try to be funny together on screen. They're as funny together off screen as they are on screen. So when you have a chance to just let them loose, sometimes the scene will spin into something that you just didn't think was there. And before you know it, you have an even better scene or an even better part of the scene that wasn't on the page, but because you explored it with what we call alts, like alternative lines, you discover things that are like we're in their world, but you didn't yet know they were there. That's part of what we do. Is sometimes we say, all right, we're going to have that line in there because if this joke didn't turn out funny, we'd better make sure we have a way to cut around it. And what's really fun about that is it lets us take big risks with the comedy. So if you always know what you call an escape hatch, right? We can go on for minutes with some just crazy joke. It's making us laugh. We don't know if it's too absurd to be in the movie, but as long as you have a line that can jump you from A to C and get around that moment, we can do funny things. We can do in the onism run in the court. We can have a version that we know will be okay for PG-13. We can have the version that might be too R-rated to be in the movie. So we're really careful about, especially with the improv, making sure that we get all the different versions so that we don't shoot a scene that the MPA then says this can't be in the movie. My favorite kind of comedy is one that hits every facet of the audience, so you can enjoy it just on a physical comedy level. People who are fans of the original Sherlock are going to recognize iconic Sherlock phrases and some deep cuts, some obscure things from the books that I think 99% of the audience might not care about. But if you're a Sherlock fan like I am, you're going to, I think, really appreciate that we found these little ways to show that we we know our stuff too and trying to be true to the fans. I think everyone in the world is a fan of Will and John together. That's sort of a gimme. And then we could get to see them together physically. I feel like no matter what kind of comedy you like, there's something for you in this movie.
I really love the script. That's what really drew me to the movie. Not only working with Will and Etan, but the script itself has such a wonderful kind of innocence to it. There's a lot of comedy these days, I think, that has sort of a cynical, sort of been there, done that, somewhat snarky tone. And this movie reminds me more of Mel Brooks comedies, where there's a sweetness to the comedy, and the joke is always on the characters themselves as opposed to making fun of someone else. And I think somehow it will be a salve for people that are just looking for simple joy at the movies and kind of a great caper and that sense of fun that Will and I have with each other when we work together. We'll do the scripted version a couple times until we feel like, well, we got a very good by-the-book version of the scene. And then Etan will come in with some alts, or Will and I will think of some stuff on our feet as we're going along. We become inspired by whatever we're doing and get tickled about something and follow, a train of thought a certain way. And that's the way we worked on Step Brothers. That's the way we worked on Talladega Nights, and it's been a really, fertile way for us to work together. This unique take on it, the fact that we make it fun and not some stuffy old thing, I think is going to draw younger people into the world of Sherlock, which I think is great. And I think the sense of humor and the sense of sweetness and innocence and sincere comedy. There's a sincerity to what we're doing. Yes, there's a lot of arch kind of meta jokes and a lot of silliness, but we're trying to do it in an emotionally sincere way. The way we move outside of the typical realm of Sherlock Holmes in order to make it funny, I think the audiences hopefully will find very surprising. I certainly do. The funnest stuff for me is when, we go from this kind of stodgy, traditional English way of playing these characters into some absurd emotional conversation that, two men might have now. Two men would never have this conversation probably in the 1890s, but the juxtaposition of those kind of realities is really fun to play with. And it's such a rich source material. There's a reason that Sherlock is just done over and over and over and over again, because people love a good mystery. The details and forensics of crime people find fascinating. So that's like this perennial, thing about Sherlock Holmes that people just can't get enough of. And, the fact that we've turned it into a comedy, we really swing for the fences in terms of very broad humor and big visual jokes. There's this sort of sweet, goofy innocence to the humor, and that the closest thing I can think of is like a Mel Brooks film.
This is unlike any job I've ever been asked to do before. This film is like a proper comedy. It's just been a joy. I'm having such a good time, and getting to watch Will and John do what they do that you've seen so many times before in other films is just wonderful. Mrs. Hudson is quite a well-known character, and when Etan offered me the part, the way she was written was quite Cockney, so I thought I was being hired to do that. And then I found out the day before the read-through that he wanted me to play her Scottish. So we've been having interesting email conversations about, possibilities of things she might say, and it's been really fun actually, because I've been asking friends and getting lots of inspiration from back home, but just funny Scottish things that, I was worried, actually. I said to Etan, I might need to be subtitled. I don't know if people know what I'm saying. And he said, it doesn't matter, it's the intonation. You get the idea of what she's meaning. She's generally quite rude. If I think of something, it's really lovely. It feels like a real collaboration, because if you think of anything that you might like to try, then generally you can, and the more outlandish, the better, frankly. It's a very relaxed atmosphere on set as well, which is helpful. Etan's just lovely and just lets you kind of play. And Will and John are adorable. I mean, the first day I met Will, he licked my hand in greeting. He tried it again on his jacket, which was really kind. But yeah, it's just nice people.
Millie is Grace's travel companion and friend, and she's a little bit weird. Grace says she was raised by feral cats, and she's a complete weird idiot, I guess you would say. She eats paper, and there are no rules for what Millie does. Sherlock gets very infatuated with Millie because she's kind of a blank canvas for him to work with, and he's so egotistical that he can put all of his thoughts and desires onto her and kind of imagine what she's thinking about him, and it really works for him that way that she doesn't say much back. So he falls in love with her, and they end up having a bit of a romance. They've obviously worked together so much, and we've seen them in so many awesome movies, but it really comes through, like doing the scenes with them, they obviously know each other really well and are able to play off of each other, and they improvise a lot, which is really fun to watch and jump in with as much as I can, even though I have a few things to say. I can't speak as my character, but it's really a great chemistry. It's really enjoyable. Etan does allow for a lot of improv, which is really great. And I also think he's just one of the hardest working writers and directors that I've witnessed, because he's always focusing on every little detail of the script. And from what I've heard, they work all weekend on the script throughout the whole filming process, even though you could say it was done. Like, they're never done punching it up and making it better. And he really allows for that on set too. If there's any ideas that you have, he wants to hear them and collaborate. So it's been really cool.
It's a different genre for me. I've never really done any very broad comedy, and she was written as quite a sort of broadly comedic role. I guess a lot of the humour that comes with her character is part of a play on stereotypes about Americanisms and how British people view Americans and how Americans view British people, which is ironic given that I'm half English and I'm the one playing an American, and John and Will are obviously American and they're the ones playing the English people. And also a lot of the humour comes out of the sort of, I guess, misogynistic stereotypes about Victorian England, and, you know, which is a very real thing, that women could not be doctors or have any autonomy or freedom or careers, and she is someone who definitely does have all those things. And so there's a lot of humour that's derived out of the fact that everyone around her doesn't accept that she's a real person or legitimate in any way. We had a discussion, essentially, Etan and I, about how a lot of the comedic performances that we admired were good because they were played very real. And I think that's very true of comedy. I think if you're good at the dramatic stuff, you can often be quite good at the comedic stuff too, because it's just a sort of believing in what you're given to perform. It requires the same skill. You play it and you believe it. And the humour comes with the disconnect with how preposterous the stuff is that you're saying in relation to how much your commitment is to saying it. Which, of course, is often difficult to do because you just want to laugh, especially when you're working with John C. Reilly and Will Ferrell. You want to laugh all the time. But I think that is, you know, that was very much expressed to me as the way that this film would work. They are immediately very attracted to one another because they're both quite odd. Do you know the sort of idea that a doctor is very roll up your sleeves and get to it and there's no sentimentality? Well, you know, Grace is the sort of comedic extreme of that. Like, she doesn't see gore or blood or anything like that as anything but wonderful and the glory of the human body and science, and it's all become some sort of romantic fodder for the two of them, which is ridiculous, frankly. Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, they come with a whole wealth of experience of having worked together as comedic partners on a bunch of films now, and they have a real intrinsic trust of one another, and it's really wonderful to watch and be around, actually. And if one of them throws something out there, then the other one immediately picks it up and throws something back again, and there's a real exchange all the time. And they're also very honest with each other in between takes. They'll be like, did that work? Or how's that? And it's really lovely. Like, they have a very kind of easy relationship, and they're obviously great friends. So it's great to witness, and they just work together. I mean, the biggest problem is not laughing all the time. Watching Lauren Lapkus, who plays my sort of sidekick, often she's standing next to me, so I don't always see what she's doing, but often I'll catch it in the corner of my eye, and she's truly brilliant, and that's entirely a characterization that she's come up with that's, essentially mime. I mean, what she's doing is inspired. There's just reams and reams of footage of her doing ridiculous stuff. I don't know how much of it. There has to be like a huge blooper reel that'll go on for 10 minutes of just her doing her bit.
There's a real thrill in working with the two of them, especially having watched Step Brothers and Talladega Nights, and knowing the thing they have between them. It's really enjoyable to slot into that and see what you can do in that dynamic. It was great fun, and they've been hugely welcoming and open to improvising. Lestrade is constantly turning up at crime scenes, trying to have some authority, but all the people support Sherlock. He's a folk hero to them. So what's great as an actor is you'll get Will and John playing total confidence in what appear to be stupid judgments. So I can then be exasperated and at my wit's end. And that's great fun to play. And they are so good at playing misguided confidence. I think that's one of the things that Will does really well, is a confident idiot. And it's a particular thing that he does, and he does it so beautifully. There is something delightful about seeing two people that you've already enjoyed on screen in their relationship, particularly in Step Brothers. There's echoes of Step Brothers in this sometimes when they squabble with each other, or when they're taking delight in each other. So it reminds you of something you've already seen, you've already loved, and that's really lovely. Visually, they're interesting. They're both big guys. They're tall. They're about 6'3", something like that, I guess. So they look good together, and they've got a lovely empathy and a sort of simpatico with each other. They allow each other gaps and spaces. They complement each other very well. And Holmes and Watson is a perfect way to take that relationship. It fits it perfectly, because you've got Sherlock, the authority guy, and then you've got Watson, devoted to him. So within that, then, you can really play with that dynamic. Holmes and Watson plays to a wide audience because it's such a tradition. It's a whodunit. At heart, that's what it is. It's a whodunit mixed in with that kind of signature Will Ferrell, John C. Reilly comedic sense, with some fantastic actors, some beautiful locations, many of them very close to my home. What's not to like?
To finally be, here shooting in London, in the wardrobe, speaking with the British accent alongside John C. Reilly and this amazing cast. Also with the rehearsals leading up to that moment, it was a little bit surreal, but very exciting. As we kind of talked about what type of character Sherlock would be. We really wanted to focus on the fact that he would be almost a comedic version of Spock from Star Trek, that he is obviously all about logic. He's so incredibly smart. At the same time, he's a little void of just regular kind of interaction and feelings that normal human beings have. He's not trying to be mean. It's just the way he is. And we just thought that would be so funny to kind of heighten, play upon that. I've always been a huge fan of John's. We just hit the ground running in terms of sharing kind of the same comedic sensibility, coming at it from, oddly enough, never trying to be funny, just trying to be true to the character, and within the context of the scene and the writing, trust that it will turn out funny. So we're never going for jokes in a weird way. We're just trying to act out the scene in an honest, believable way. Now, because it's completely ridiculous, it works. So just kind of sharing those beliefs, and at times sharing the same brain in terms of the times we improvise and knowing how to play off of each other. All those things are just things that just fell into place, which, I never would have predicted, and it only happens when you just start working with someone. We're playing the genre and the time period, absolutely real, and we are close enough to the target for real, Holmes and Watson fans to be satisfied and appreciative. At the same time, it's going to be silly enough and fun enough for a general audience, and maybe people who aren't as familiar with the material. We get to comment on the current world, just various aspects that when you read the books, you think, oh, that'd be funny if you could make fun of this. And that's the whole purpose of this movie. The only reason to do this movie is to make it so crazy, because we have license to kind of go places that any other version hasn't gone. And that's where I think it'll be surprising and fun. And the fact that, we just keep laughing that two American actors are playing arguably the most iconic character in literature in a way. And the pairing of John and I back together, in a way, I think it's a really, we could have possibly done sequels of the films we've done, which we're so happy that they've had this kind of great cult status. But to see us in a brand new kind of thing is I think a hipper move.